Imagine being lifted off your feet by a man you've met only 3 times. His arms wrap around you, carrying you over a threshold decorated with greenery and wool. Behind you, the crowd is still singing, their voices crude and cheerful, celebrating what they believe is the happiest night of your life. You believe it too. You're 17 years old, draped in a flame-colored veil, and you've just become a wife. Then the door closes. The singing fades to a muffled hum. The torchlight from the street disappears, and as your new husband sets you down in the atrium of his home, you realize something is wrong. There are too many people here. Not guests, not family. Strangers arranged in careful positions around the room, watching you with expressions you cannot read. An elderly woman in ceremonial robes stands closest, her eyes fixed on your face. Behind her, 3 female slaves hold basins and folded clothes. A man with graying hair clutches a leather pouch, the kind physicians carry. And in the corner, half hidden in shadow, something tall stands beneath a heavy drape of linen. You weren't told about any of this. Your mother had fixed your hair that morning, weaving it into 6 careful braids while her hands trembled. You'd seen the tears she tried to hide. You'd heard the warning she whispered into your ear just before the procession began. Do not resist. Whatever they ask of you, do not resist. It only makes everything harder. You hadn't understood. You'd thought she meant the wedding night itself, the duty every bride owed her husband. You thought she was being protective, perhaps overly cautious, but now, standing in this silent room full of watching strangers, you understand that her warning meant something else entirely. The elderly woman steps forward. Her grip closes around your wrist, firm enough that pulling away would require a struggle. Her voice carries the weight of ritual, of centuries. Welcome to your husband's house. The sacred rites must now be completed. You glance toward the cloth-covered shape in the corner. No one has moved to reveal it yet, but you can feel every pair of eyes in the room aware of its presence. You can feel that whatever stands beneath that fabric is the reason your mother cried. In a few moments, you'll learn what it is. In a few moments, you'll understand why Roman historians refuse to write about this night directly, and why later generations try to erase it from memory entirely. This is your wedding night. But it isn't about love. It never was. The day had begun like something from a dream. At dawn, her mother had parted her hair with the tip of a spearhead, an ancient tradition meant to ward off evil spirits. 6 braids were woven carefully and secured with ribbons of white wool. The flame-colored veil, the flammeum, was draped over her head, marking her unmistakably as a bride. She looked beautiful. Everyone said so. She almost believed it herself. At the temple, the priest sacrificed a sheep and examined its entrails. The omens were favorable. The gods approved. Her father stood beside her and spoke the ancient formula that transferred her from his legal authority to her husband's. She was no longer his daughter in the eyes of Roman law. She belonged to someone else now. Then came the vows. She spoke the words that generations of Roman brides had whispered before her. Ubi tu Gaius, ego Gaia. Where you are, Gaius, I am Gaia. A promise that erased her individual identity and bound her fate entirely to a man she barely knew. Marcus Petronius Rufus was 24 years older than her. A grain merchant, wealthy, respectable. They had met 3 times before this day, always in the presence of their families, always briefly. She knew the shape of his face. She did not know his voice when he was angry. She did not know how he treated his slaves. She did not know what he expected from her once the doors of his house closed behind them. But Roman marriage was not about knowing. It was about transferring. The procession through the streets should have felt triumphant. Torches blazed against the evening sky. Guests scattered walnuts at her feet for fertility. Children ran alongside laughing, but the songs the crowd sang were not sweet. The Fescennine verses were crude, explicit, deliberately obscene. Young men shouted suggestions through her veil that made her face burn. The tradition claimed these songs amused the gods and frightened evil spirits, but the words felt less like protection and more like warning. Her mother walked behind her, silent. Earlier that morning, she had seen her mother's hands shaking while fixing her braids. She had seen the tears wiped away quickly, hidden before anyone could ask questions. And she remembered the whispered words, "Do not resist." She hadn't asked what that meant. She hadn't wanted to know. The procession wound through the city as twilight faded to black. Ahead, the house of Marcus Petronius Rufus waited, its doorway decorated with torches and greenery. Everything looked beautiful. Everything looked perfect. But Roman marriage had two faces. The public one, with veils and songs and scattered walnuts, and the private one, performed behind sealed doors that no Roman writer dared describe directly. To understand what happened behind those doors, you first have to understand what Roman marriage actually was. Not what it looked like, not what poets wrote about it, what it was in the eyes of the law. It was not a union of souls. It was not a celebration of love. It was a transaction, a legal transfer of property from one man to another, witnessed and documented with the same care Romans applied to the sale of land, livestock, or slaves. Under the oldest Roman laws, a bride passed completely into her husband's control through a process called conventio in manum. Literally, she was placed in his hand, the same hand that held authority over his slaves, his children, his household. In the eyes of Roman law, a wife was not a partner. She was a possession. Her husband held theoretical power of life and death over her, the same power he held over everyone else he owned. By the imperial era, some of these laws had softened on the surface. Women could own property in certain circumstances. Divorce had become possible, but the foundation had not changed. Marriage still transferred a woman from her father's legal control to her husband's. And like all major transfers in Rome, this one required verification. Think about how Romans handled the sale of farmland. Witnesses observed the transaction. Priests invoked divine blessing. Boundaries were walked and inspected. Documents were sealed and stored. Nothing was left to assumption. Everything was checked, confirmed, recorded. Romans applied the exact same logic to marriage, but with one uncomfortable difference. The property being transferred was not land. It was a human body. And the asset being purchased was not acreage or livestock. It was that body's ability to produce legitimate heirs. A bride's virginity was not a matter of morality or romance. It was a matter of legal certainty. If a woman had been with another man before her husband, any children she bore could be challenged as illegitimate. Inheritance disputes could erupt. Family lines could be thrown into question. For Rome's wealthy and powerful families, this uncertainty was unacceptable. So Roman law demanded proof, not a rumor, not assumption, verified evidence that the bride was untouched before the marriage, and verified evidence that the marriage had been physically completed afterward. Both of these facts needed to be established beyond dispute, documented in ways that could hold up before a magistrate if the union was ever challenged. And this is where the story takes its disturbing turn. If virginity required verification, someone had to verify it. If consummation required proof, someone had to witness it. Roman legal logic was brutally consistent. Property transfers needed documentation. Marriage was a property transfer. Therefore, marriage needed documentation. What exactly did that documentation involve? Who was present? What did they see? What did they do? Ancient Roman writers rarely answered these questions directly. Even in a society that displayed sexuality openly in art and conversation, the rituals of the wedding night were discussed only in fragments, hints, and embarrassed silences. The reason for that silence is about to become clear. The pronuba's grip tightened around her wrist and guided her toward the corner of the room, toward the shape beneath the cloth. The witnesses shifted slightly, angling for a better view. The physician remained motionless. The slaves held their basins and waited. Every person in that room already knew what was about to happen. She was the only one who didn't. "You must greet mutinus tutunus," the pronuba said. Her voice was calm, ritualistic, as though she had spoken these words 100 times before. "You must seek his blessing before your husband may approach. The gods must witness your submission." She had never heard this name before. Mutinus tutunus. It sounded almost comical, the kind of name children might invent. But no one in the room was laughing. No one was even smiling. Her hands trembled as she reached for the linen. The fabric was heavier than she expected. She pulled it away slowly, letting it fall to the floor. And then she understood. Standing before her was a wooden figure nearly 4 feet tall, carved with anatomical precision into a shape that left no room for misunderstanding. This was not a decorative statue. This was not a symbol meant to be admired from a respectful distance. It was built for physical interaction, built for contact, built for a purpose that became horrifyingly clear the moment the pronuba began positioning her body. Mutinus. Tutunus was one of Rome's oldest and most obscure deities, a god of fertility, of sexuality, of marital initiation. Ancient authors mentioned him rarely, and when they did, their language was thick with embarrassment. Even Romans, who displayed explicit imagery openly in their homes and public spaces, treated this particular god as something shameful, something that existed but should not be discussed. Centuries later, Christian writers would describe the ritual with fury and disgust. Augustine, writing as Christianity overtook the empire, condemned the practice in terms that left little doubt about what occurred. Roman brides, he wrote, were required to sit upon the god's emblem before lying with their husbands. They did so in front of witnesses. He used the Latin word incidere, meaning to settle onto, to mount. His language was not metaphorical. Other writers confirmed the same. Arnobius described brides straddling the figure while their new husbands watched. Lactantius refused to describe the details at all, claiming that even speaking of it polluted the tongue. These were not inventions created to slander a dying religion. These were descriptions of rituals that had been practiced for centuries. Modern historians, uncomfortable with the implications, have sometimes suggested softer interpretations. Perhaps the bride merely sat on the statue's lap in a symbolic gesture. Perhaps physical contact was minimal, ceremonial, brief. But the ancient sources do not support this reading. The language is too specific. The disgust is too visceral. The silence from Roman writers themselves, who normally had no hesitation discussing sexual matters, suggests that something genuinely transgressive was occurring. The official purpose was fertility. The god's blessing would ensure the bride conceived quickly and bore healthy children, but the unspoken purpose may have been something else entirely. To break down resistance, to demonstrate submission before witnesses, to prepare a virgin body for what the law required next. She stood frozen as the pronuba adjusted her posture, arranged her limbs, guided her forward, without gentleness or apology. The witnesses watched in silence. Her husband watched. The physician waited with his hands clasped, patient, ready. And in that moment, she finally understood what her mother's warning had meant. She understood the trembling hands, the hidden tears, the desperate whisper, "Do not resist." When the ritual finally ended, slaves approached with warmed water and scented oils. They washed her carefully, murmuring prayers of purification. But the cleansing was not only spiritual, it had a practical purpose as well. It prepared her for the examination that came next. The physician stepped forward before the water on her skin had fully dried. He was an older man, perhaps 60, with the detached expression of someone who had performed this duty many times before. His leather pouch opened with a soft click, revealing instruments she did not recognize and did not want to understand. He did not introduce himself. He did not ask her permission. He simply gestured toward a low couch positioned near the wall, and the pronuba guided her toward it. This was not the first examination she had endured that day. Hours earlier, before the procession, before the temple, before the vows, a midwife had come to her father's house. The woman had been efficient and unapologetic. She had documented what she found with clinical precision, recording observations that would be sealed and stored in case they were ever needed in court. The examination established a baseline. It declared to Roman law that this bride was untouched, that the asset being transferred was unaltered, that her value was intact. Now comes the second examination. This one served a different purpose. The physician needed to confirm that the ritual with mutunus tutunus had been completed. He needed to verify that the physical signs matched the earlier documentation, that the expected changes had occurred, that she was now prepared for what the law demanded next. His findings would be recorded alongside the midwife's earlier observations. Together, they would form a legal record that could be produced before a magistrate if the marriage was ever challenged. She lay on the couch, as instructed. The pronuba stood beside her, one hand resting on her shoulder, not for comfort, but for control. The witnesses remained in the room. They did not look away. Their presence was not an accident or an oversight. It was required. Their testimony might one day be demanded in court, and they needed to observe everything. The examination was thorough. The physician's hands were cold. His instruments were colder. He spoke only to dictate observations to a slave who recorded them on a wax tablet. He did not speak to her. He did not acknowledge her trembling, her shallow breathing, the tears sliding silently down her temples into her hair. Her comfort was not part of the procedure. Her emotions were not relevant to the documentation. In the eyes of Roman law, she was property being transferred, and property did not have feelings. Property did not experience humiliation or fear or violation. Property was simply verified, documented, and passed from one owner to another according to established procedure. When the physician finally stepped back and closed his leather pouch, he nodded once to the pronuba, a confirmation that everything was in order, a signal that the process could continue. The slaves helped her rise from the couch. They draped a fresh garment over her shoulders, lightweight and loose. They did not meet her eyes. Perhaps they had stood in this room before, assisting with other brides, other examinations. Perhaps they had learned that looking directly at the girl only made the silence heavier. The pronuba took her arm again, her grip familiar now, almost routine. The examination was complete, but the night was far from over. The bedchamber waited at the end of the corridor, its door open, its lamps already burning. The bedchamber had been prepared with care. Oil lamps lined the walls, their flames steady and bright, casting the room in warm golden light. The bed was positioned deliberately, angled so that it could be seen clearly from the doorway. Fresh linens had been laid across it. Garlands of flowers hung from the bedposts. Everything looked beautiful. Everything looked romantic, and the door stayed open. The pronuba guided her inside and positioned her beside the bed. She did not leave. She would not leave until the ritual was complete. Her duty was to observe, to instruct if necessary, to ensure that every aspect of the consummation aligned with legal expectation. She had done this many times before. Her expression betrayed nothing. Marcus entered a few moments later. He paused at the threshold, glancing toward the pronuba with an expression she had not expected. Not confidence, not anticipation, discomfort, perhaps even shame. He was a wealthy man, respected in his trade, accustomed to authority. But in this room, under these circumstances, even he seemed to understand that what was about to happen was not intimacy. It was a verification. The pronuba spoke, her voice heavy with ritual formality. The bride is made ready. The gods have witnessed her submission. Let the union be completed according to the customs of our ancestors. Let those present affirm the act. Let no doubt remain that this woman has become a wife. What followed unfolded slowly, hour by hour, under observation. The pronuba remained at the doorway, watching. Occasionally, she stepped forward, adjusting a position, offering instruction, correcting something she deemed improper. Her interventions were matter-of-fact, clinical, as though she was supervising any other household task. The slaves waited in the corridor, ready to assist when called. The lamps burned steadily, never dimming, ensuring visibility throughout the night. Nothing was private. Nothing was meant to be. The door stayed open because tradition demanded it, because witnesses might later be asked to confirm what they heard, what they observed, what they could testify to before a magistrate. Every sound that traveled into the corridor was evidence. Every movement visible from the doorway was documentation. Her body had become parchment, and what happened in that bed was Rome's way of writing its seal upon her. By dawn, the lamps had burned low and the air felt thick and heavy. The pronuba finally stepped back from the doorway. The physician returned, entering the bedchamber with the same detached expression he had worn hours earlier. His task was simple: confirm that consummation had occurred, document that she now bore the physical evidence expected of a woman who had crossed from virgin to wife. The examination was brief. His findings were recorded. Pronuba gave her sworn testimony, confirming what she had observed throughout the night. The witnesses who had remained in the house added their statements. Documents were prepared, sealed, and stored. The legal transformation was complete. She was no longer the girl who had walked through that doorway the night before. She was a Roman wife now, her status verified, her body documented, her role defined by law and ritual, and the testimony of strangers who had watched her most intimate moments without flinching. She rose from the bed as slaves entered to change the linens. She allowed them to wash her, dress her, arrange her hair. She moved through these motions in silence, her face betraying nothing. She would never speak of this night, not to her sisters, not to her daughters, not to anyone. And she would never hear another Roman woman speak of theirs. For nearly 1,000 years, this